Sometimes I have an issue when I don't like the name, especially if you're a protagonist, if you're the main guy, or you're the main girl and I don't like your name. Maybe I'll stop reading. Hi everyone, it's Fifi and welcome if you're new here. Thank you so much for swimming by my channel, and if you are back, thank you for being here again. Wow, I haven't said those words in so long. I haven't been on here in the longest time and I'm itching. I have been so excited to be here, to be in this space, to just talk. Happy New Year, everyone. It's 2025. I can't believe life has just passed us by so quickly. So many things have just happened. I am a different person. Happy to be here. Happy to be back. I started booktubing or posting about books on YouTube in 2021, I believe. Like, it was the height of the pandemic and we were all stuck in our homes and everyone was reading. And 2021, I think, was my biggest reading year. If I'm not mistaken, I read 57 books. In 2022, I read 38 books. In 2023, I read 15 books. It just keeps going down, guys. I would like to just continue the streak and say that in 2024, I read 15 books. Actually, 14.5, because technically I want to count the last book that I read as part of 2024, even if I did finish the last 3 pages in 2025, I still count that. 2023 was more of a better reading year in terms of quality of books versus 24. It's the same amount of books but lesser in quality, and I will get into that when we get into the books. I think I only have 2 5-star books in 2024, and that's saying a lot because I'm rarely stingy with my 5 stars. When I really like something, I will give it a 5 stars, no question. But this year I only have 2 5 stars and maybe 1 potential 5 star, but I don't know if it's a 5 star yet. Yeah, okay, let's start. I'm really nervous. I don't know why. I haven't done this in a long time. I'm just gonna start. This is not in order of how I read it. Again, it's based on my ranking, so my least favorites to my most favorites. Unfortunately, this year, my least favorite book is called Unfortunately Yours by Tessa Bailey. It's really sad that I did not like this because this is one of my favorite romance tropes, if not my most favorite romance trope, which is the fake dating trope. I simply love a scrumptious, good time when two people, usually with these things, they don't know each other. They come to an agreement to fake date to achieve X goal, right? I had high hopes because Tessa Bailey wrote one of my favorite romances of all time, One Summer Day. Is it called One Summer Day? The one about the fishing village that I read. Not fishing village, fisherman. It happened one summer. There you go. So we follow this girl, Natalie, who recently lost her job, and she is suffering a big financial loss as well, which is why she wanted to put up a business venture, but because she doesn't have money of her own, she needs to access her trust fund because her parents are rich. But in order to get access to the trust fund that her parents have for her, she has to be married. Lo and behold, we have Eric, is her name? No, sorry, August. Where did I get Eric? We meet August Cates, who owns a vineyard. He doesn't really know anything about wines. He inherited this vineyard from an ex-colleague who I believe passed, his late best friend, who I think they met in the military. I don't know, died in the military, and he inherited or bought this land of his best friend to pay homage, I guess, to his memory. And he tried to build the business, the wine business and the vineyards, but he doesn't know anything about wines. Then comes Natalie, who knows everything about wines and wants to get into the business. So they get into an arranged fake dating, fake marriage. I forgot that this was a fake marriage. So it's not only a fake dating, it's a fake marriage situation so that Natalie can get access to her trust fund, and then they fall in love. So I gave this 2 out of 5. Unfortunately, Yours. A lot of the plot lines, if I remember correctly. By the way, disclaimer, most of these books I've forgotten. I've forgotten them. Only a few stand out, and if I have forgotten them even more than the ones that I acutely remember, then maybe that's a problem. But also I could be the problem because I forget plots. Like, I remember not loving this, mostly because a lot of it was just, I will say, comically fast-paced and not in a good way. You know, with romance books like this, it's really a no-brainer. You really just do not have to think, you just have to feel and absorb and laugh and cringe and just have a good time. Well, I did, with parts of it, I had fun. Most of it was just like and not really that much of a great time. I read it with no literary expectations at all. And I read it for the romance, for just to feel some sort of happiness, but it fell also flat in that aspect, and I didn't really love the banter. If I remember correctly, it wasn't as, witty and funny to me. So yeah. Okay, the next book, I don't know yet. I haven't really stewed my stew. Sometimes when you overthink how much you like something or you like a book, given the context that surrounds the book, it's hard to come up with a definitive decision on how you feel about it. And that's very much how I feel about the book I Hope This Finds You Well by Natalie Sue. This book is really... It was so painful. It was so painful to read because a lot of the decisions that the main character was making, it was a big, don't do this to yourself. So we follow a girl named Jolene who really hates her job. She doesn't like it there. She works for Super Shops Inc. So she works for a retail, and she basically hates her life there. She doesn't like her coworkers, and what she does, weirdly, is when she emails a coworker that she doesn't like, which is 99% of the people there, it's really more for herself. She puts a message there that she really wants to tell a person. Like, for example, Joanna, her coworker, not a real name in the book, but just an example. Dear Joanna, please submit this Excel sheet on X time today. Before the message ends, she will say, your sweater is so ugly and I hate you. She puts it at the end, and get this, she makes the text white so that it won't be seen and sends it. She sends the freaking email with the bad text. For some reason, she feels some kind of catharsis in her soul that she made the dig on the person, but really didn't because it's not visible to the person. Anyway, she sends these really strange and sometimes often offensive messages to her coworkers. And one day, she gets caught. She gets put into a, what is that called? Like a HR probation period where she has this counseling thing that goes on with a new HR counselor. So she gets on this course period training with the HR dude who is assigned to her because of this case. And suddenly, I don't understand it actually, suddenly she gets access to everybody's emails. She can open her colleagues' emails and can see their inboxes, their sent messages, everything. And she can even respond to emails of her colleagues as her colleague. So basically she has full IT bird's eye view of everyone in the office, which again, I forget how that happened, but it's a vital, integral part of the plot. She finds out what people are saying about her. She finds out a lot of dirty little secrets of her office mates, and it just becomes this whole spiral of her trying to redeem herself in the office because she doesn't want to get fired, but also she hates her job still, but she needs it. She starts having feelings for the HR guy who's trying to not get her fired. It basically was a rough read for me personally, because a lot of Jolene's action points in every chapter, I really just wanted to yell at her. But also, she was coming from a very traumatic place, a lot of history, a lot of trauma, which will be tackled in the book. And I know a lot of people really, this is the reality, a lot of people really do drastically questionable things when they are going through things or when they are mentally ill. But it was just tough. I don't know if I should be more understanding towards her because she was going through things because of her trauma, or if I just really do find her stupid. Maybe a bit of both. Okay, so let's start with my 3 out of 5 books, and the first one that I will be mentioning will come as a surprise, might come as a surprise, because this is a widely loved book on the internet right now, or at least in 2024, and that is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. I think I have established early on in my reading journey, even when I was a kid, even when I was a teenager, when I started reading romance novels, that I am not the biggest enemies to lovers fan. I seem like I am, and I get that. I know I have the vibe, but I'm not. I'm a fake dating, grumpy sunshine trope lover. And enemies to lovers really is at the bottom of the list. And with Divine Rivals, it's not because of the trope in itself that I didn't enjoy it as much as other people did. Although I did enjoy it, I love the writing. I just want to get this out there. Rebecca Ross's writing is beautiful. Her prose, poetry, and in the world that she built where gods are at war and people are fighting for the gods, like people literally enlist into the military to fight for a god. Such a beautiful concept. It's such a beautiful lore. I don't know, for some reason I guess this just fell quite flat in certain aspects. I really love our main characters, Iris and Roman. I guess a big portion of the book was just them not together, and not I don't mean romantically, but they just weren't in the same space at the same time. So the concept, sorry for those who don't know what this book is about, it's about 2 rival journalists, Iris and Roman. They work for the same newspaper company. Our rival journalists, they want the same position in a newspaper company, maybe editor or something. Iris's brother, she lost in the war. She doesn't know if he's dead yet, sorry. She doesn't know where he is, but he is lost. We haven't seen him. He enlisted at the start of the book. You will read him enlisting into the war, into the military, to fight for the war, to fight for their goddess. I forgot the goddess's name, but there are 2 rival gods rivaling. And Iris's family is on the goddess's side, and then Roman's family, or Roman, is fighting for the god's side, which is kind of a really great parallel to our 2 rival characters, Iris and Roman. Iris writes to her brother who is in the war and he hasn't responded in years. Suddenly, one day, he started writing back, but it wasn't her brother. It was someone else. And we find out in the book that it's Roman. This is not a spoiler. This is in the blurb. We find out in the book that it's Roman, and they start writing to each other. She wants to find out who this person is, who's pretending to be her brother. And yeah, I don't remember anything else. All I know is I was expecting quite more from the book. And again, I think it's really because they weren't together and the banter was lost. I really love the letters that they wrote to each other, such beautiful letters, but I would have, at some point I was bored. I have to admit I got bored a bit, although it really was already beautiful, but I was just expecting an oomph that I didn't get. Okay, next book we have Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. I'm really, I won't want to say disappointed, that's too big of a word, but The Love Hypothesis was one of, and still continues to be one of my favorite romance books of all time. I really was on my knees for that book, especially since it's a fake dating trope, and I am all up for that. But the books that followed The Love Hypothesis, it being Ali Hazelwood's debut novel, the books that followed unfortunately have not done it for me, and Love Theoretically is one of those books. I read, I think, all of her novellas, like her scientist novellas, like women in STEM novellas. However, when this came out, a lot of people said that, oh, she's back. Like Ali Hazelwood, she's done it again. But this honestly did not do it for me. So we follow Elsie, who is a professor by day. Her dream job is to become an MIT fellow, I believe. And she is a physicist. Always the women in STEM for Ali Hazelwood. I really love reading about her women in STEM. Elsie also is a fake girlfriend by night. So she works for this online agency that hires fake girlfriends for men. One of her clients, one of her favorite clients, actually. So she was hired to be his fake girlfriend, and then she went to a family function, and there she met Jack, who is our male protagonist. He is a physicist as well in MIT, and he is an experimentalist. So what I really loved, and what I really continue to love about Ali Hazelwood's books, is we get a little peek inside the STEM world. I'm not a woman of STEM, and I will never be, unfortunately. But I love like getting a little peek inside the curtain of women who really work for science, who live and breathe science in all its forms and in all its hardships. In the world of physicists, there are experimentalists and then there are theorists, and they hate each other. So theorists are basically those who theorize, those who are in the labs, working on books, working on research. And experimentalists are those out on the field who actually put the theories into practice. So they hate each other because the other says that, oh, you people are just stuck in your labs and don't do anything, while the others really do practice physics, you know? So that's how the rivalry goes. And that was really so interesting for me. And it was so interesting for me to see how our two main characters were in different ends of these spectrums, and I love that. That was such a good plot point and such good detail. I just wish everything else was more. I think our theme for this, for our 3-star books, or our theme for 2024, was I just wanted more. Everything really just fell flat. So she is fake dating Jack's younger brother. Jack sees her, which is a big detriment to her career because she wants to enroll into MIT, and he's in the panel of MIT like hiring committee, which is her dream job. The plot sounds fun. I know it sounds fun, but it just didn't do it for me. And then after I read Love Theoretically, to prove to myself that I'm not a hater, I reread The Love Hypothesis, and I still loved it. Absolutely. I was bonkers. I continued to be bonkers for that book. So okay, I have one more 3-star book before we go to the 4 stars. And my last 3-star book of the year is The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. And I know what you're thinking. Why? I'm not one for reading classics. Honestly, I haven't gotten into the classical reading journey. It's a work in progress and it takes practice. And what better to start practicing reading the classics to start with modern classics? And I figured going into The Great Gatsby would be a good start. The Great Gatsby, I will say, was one of the more accessible ones. I read it simultaneously with listening to the audiobook, which really, really helped. I do realize how it is such a cultural phenomenon and how its themes really underscored so many aspects of American history, or of history in general. Now, looking back, it really covers so many themes and important aspects of a human being and of living in such a turbulent society, in a turbulent world that has so many expectations of you. And for a lot of people with simple desires, you have to go through so many lengths to get to where you want to be, no matter how simple your goals are. And with Jay Gatsby, I think it also really was a compelling story because of how it was narrated. It was narrated through the eyes of Nick, and honestly, I thought he was in love with him, but that is a different discussion in itself. The writing to me wasn't lyrical in any way, but the sentences were just so thematic, and the descriptive way of writing, of just painting a picture of Long Island, of New York City, of America in the 1920s. It was like watching a movie. I think that's the magic of F. Scott Fitzgerald's writing. He transports you really to where you need to be in your head when you read his books. Reading about massive wealth and unhappiness despite massive wealth is always a polarizing discussion for me, I think. You know, it's always a discussion of, you know, money doesn't buy you happiness and money can't buy everything and all that. But at the end of the day, for people who haven't seen money like that, it's a different story and it's a different bone to pick, you know. Okay, so I don't know why I said The Great Gatsby was the last book with 3 stars, because I have like several more books with 3 stars, so ignore what I said. The next book that I read is The Blind Side by Candy Steiner. This is another fake dating book, and I know, I'm sorry, I'm just me. I must simply read a fake dating book. This is a fake dating sports romance about a girl, forgot her name, sorry. This was so long ago. Our female main character is a PR manager of a football team in a university, and our main male protagonist is the, of course, college football star. His name is Clay. They get into a fake dating situation because our main girl, let's call her Anna. I don't really know her name. Anna is in love with this musician that plays on campus in the school cafe. He's also a student. And then Clay just got dumped by his childhood sweetheart girlfriend, and he wants her back. So they get into a fake dating situationship to make their desired ones jealous. This was fun. I will say, I love a good sports romance, but I would have loved more of the sport. And I know that's very contrary for most people. Most people love the sport as a background and want the romance in the forefront, which is very valid because it's a romance book, first of all. But I really want, and I'm not into a lot of sports, I'm only into a couple sports, but I would really love to have seen the sports more incorporated into the story and into like the budding romance of the two main characters. And I didn't see that. I had fun, but it just, like all the other books that I've mentioned, it just didn't have that oomph. The next one is very, very interesting, and I don't know if I still have it at 3. Maybe a 3.5 would be a better rating. It was such an interesting journey. Like, I really had such a good time with it, and also it kept me on the edge of my seat, which is always a plus. There's something about it that just was so compelling, which is probably why I'll bump it to a 3.5. The reason why it's not a 4 or a 4 or higher is because, sorry, this is If We Were Villains by ML Rio. This is a dark academia murder mystery. I know, right? That sounds so good. About a group of students who are studying Shakespeare in a art school. Right off the bat, just hearing art school and Shakespeare, you might figure that most of them are rich. And usually with these dark academia stories, it's really about elite education and a bunch of rich kids, which is basically the story. So there are a bunch of drama students studying Shakespeare. One of them mysteriously dies. We don't know who killed this student, and we just go on a journey with these really complex characters. It was really interesting to be with them while we figure out who killed the person. We don't know who did it. We don't know if any of them did it. We don't know if it's an outsider. I think the reason why it's not a 4 and above is because why? Despite it, having me on the edge of my seat and constantly guessing and it being really a really intriguing book, it didn't wow me as much as I thought it would. It was building up to be really exciting. For me, it was like it was here, and then it went up, and then it went down, and then it went up again, and then it went down. So I really can't explain my feelings for this book. At one point, I really loved it, and there's nothing I think in the book that I didn't love. But then again, there was just no secret sauce that really evoked strong emotions. The second to the last is Yellow Face by R.F. Kuang. This book was incredibly interesting and incredibly uncomfortable, but in a really intriguing way, not in a boring way or in a useless, stupid way. In this book, we follow a white author, June Hayward, and I didn't say white inconsequentially. I mention it because this is a story about race, and June is best friends with Athena Liu, who is a Chinese American author, I believe. Athena is exponentially more successful than June. She has been in the New York Times list for so many times. She has written many fictional stories with Asian elements, which really makes her a well-loved author in this world, right? And June, on the other hand, has written one book, I believe, and she hasn't been very successful in the writing world. She is friends, quote unquote, with Athena because they went to the same school together. She often describes their friendship as more out of a necessity because nobody is really friends with Athena. She described Athena as a loner back in school, and she was just one of the few friends that she hung out with. Like, I felt like she didn't particularly love Athena or even like Athena. Most of it was a lot of jealousy and resentment on her part because of Athena's success and her lack of However, one day, June witnesses Athena's death, where she chokes on something that she ate as an accident, and June is the only person present on the time of death. So it's a tragic accident. Athena dies, but so do her unwritten works. They die with her. And one of the manuscripts that she has mentioned to June that she was currently in the process of publishing, or she has already finished writing it and wanted to publish it, was in the apartment where she died, where June was. And June took the manuscript from Athena's office and started building it into her own work. She didn't just take the manuscript and published it as her own. That's not what she did. When she took it, she reworked it. And in her description, she tried to really revamp it and make it sound like herself. And in the way she was describing our protagonist or antagonist or anti-hero, she really reconstructed the whole story, and she calls it more of her work than Athena's, because most of it she rewrote and the language that was used was hers. But the ideas, the characters, the story was purely Athena's. So it was stolen work. It was a plagiarized piece of work. What was really interesting about the story is it's very contemporary in a sense that it's deeply rooted in social media. Like, social media was such a big part of the plot. While we do live in a very advanced digital age, and most, like, if not 99% of the world is on social media, this was, to me, first of all, the whole aspect of race, I feel very relevant topic to touch on, which was what was the most compelling thing, I think, about the story. So in the book, June Hayward, she doesn't use her last name Hayward, which is obviously a very Western or a very white last name. Her publisher suggests that she change her name to Juniper Song. To avoid controversy, she publishes the book under an Asian sounding name, Juniper Song, because the manuscript that she stole from Athena was heavily rooted in Chinese culture. Her publisher suggested that it would be better to kind of give her an Asian touch to her name, just so it doesn't seem like too much appropriation, I guess, or like, you know, a white author writing about Chinese history. But it really bit her back in the ass. Same with how I felt about I Hope This Finds You Well. These two characters, what they have in common is they make the worst decisions in their lives. It was just so uncomfortable. But the difference with Yellowface is the topic of yellow facing yourself or portraying yourself as somewhat Asian just to cater to an Asian or the Asian diaspora or the Asian community, or to garner readers from that demographic is it was so uncomfortable to read this, especially being in the mind of, well, I know R.F. Kuang is the one who wrote this and she's Asian American, I believe, but being in the mind of a white person and thinking like this, it was just so uncomfortable. But to sit in that discomfort, it wasn't useless. It really was an eye-opening and very thought-provoking piece. You know, as an Asian, like the topic of diversity these days, especially with the media and the books and the literature that we consume, it's not a secret that most of us really consume or are centered on Western media. And you know, despite having these actions for diversity in Western spaces, it really is also a discourse on why we can't focus on our own literature and our own cultures and our own histories. This really was so thought-provoking. It really made me think about why do I read all of these Western English books? Why do I love them so much? And the answers are obvious. It's because it's really accessible. It's the most accessible. It's what we have there served on a platter. And not a lot of potential has been stewed, you know, especially developing countries. So, you know, these are just the thoughts that were running through my head while I was reading this. Why we crave for such diversity in Western spaces. It's different for Asian Americans who are there because, of course, they crave these kinds of representation where they are. For us Asians who are not there, I don't live in America. I live in the Philippines, obviously, and it shouldn't matter to me. I mean, I guess these are just my thoughts, but why does it matter so much that there are no Filipino authors that are making it big in America? Or why should it matter that there are not as much Filipino artists or actors or painters or writers? Why do I think of success as getting
to America. You know what I mean? It just evoked so much discourse in my brain about race and about representation and about people of color and Asian representation. And that was the most compelling part about the book. In terms of it being deep-rooted in social media, I read a lot of critique regarding R.F. Kuang. I'm not really familiar with R.F. Kuang, to be completely honest. I know she's big because of the many beautiful books she's written. She's written Poppy War, which I've read. That's the only other work of hers that I've read. I've never read Babel or any of the other Poppy War books. I never continued it, and I don't know if I want to. Poppy War wasn't one of my favorites either. It was beautifully written. It was a great prose, writing style, pacing was beautiful, history beautiful, the lore beautiful. Just the plot was a bit lost on me and a bit confusing. But I have been reading that she has used a lot of the critiques towards her as a real author in the real world in the book. A lot of critiques have been thrown at the Asian American author Athena Liu and also to June Hayward, who is the white author who has yellow-faced herself as an Asian writer. I don't know much about the situation about social media and R.F. Kuang. I've read some Goodreads reviews about how social media has never really been too nice to her, honestly, to anybody, but she really used this book as a vessel to air out those grievances of hers against all of these backlash and bad commentary on her and her work. In relation to that, I wish it dabbled more on not really a solution, because this is no spoilers, but the ending really felt so abrupt. It started really high, continued, went down a bit, continued again, and then it just abruptly ended on a high. To me, that was a bit strange. I wish it dabbled again a little bit more on, I don't want to say solution, because I don't really think there's just a solution to this, but how these sensitivities negatively affect the Asian community and, Asian audiences as a whole.
The last book, and I promise this is the last book in the 3 category, and this is the last one that I read for the year. I'm currently reading its sequel. It is Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. I honestly enjoy this book, and I am enjoying this series right now. It's filling a lot of cups that were empty. So it's a world of vampires. It's a complete fantasy world where vampires exist, and then there are different types of vampires. So there's the Hyaj vampires, the Rishon vampires, the Bloodborne, and then the Shadowborn. They all worship this one goddess called Nyaxia, and she basically gives power to the Nightborn children, who are the vampires. In this world, there are many gods, but Nyaxia is the goddess of all the vampires, basically. Our main character, Oriya, is human, and she was adopted by the vampire king, or the Nightborn king. She grew up in a palace full of vampires as a human, and this was extremely dangerous, obviously, because she's human and anybody at any time can just eat her and suck her blood. But since she is the adopted daughter of the Nightborn king, nobody touches her, and he's very, very protective of her. I would say he loves her. He just really looks out for her well-being and has been training her to be strong, to fight and to take care of herself. Oriya lives in the palace, but by night she is a vigilante, and she goes to the human slums. So humans are at the bottom of the food chain here, and they live in the slums. And at night she's a vigilante, so she slays all of these criminal vampires who go against the law to protect humans. And her father doesn't know about this because he would be furious and would lock her in her tower forever. The story is basically about a fight to the death tournament called the Kijari that she wants to enter, because if you enter this tournament, you are granted one wish, any wish you desire, by the goddess Nyaxia. And this tournament only comes every 250 years, I think. The last winner of the tournament was her father, the Nightborn king. Obviously, Oriya wants to join this tournament to become an immortal, or to become I forgot the term that they used in the book, but just to be bonded to her father so that they have the same power and she'll be immortal. She enters this Kijari. It's a fight to the death, and she meets this guy, this vampire man named Rain. Honestly, not my favorite name, just to put it out there. When I read the name, I was like, oh, okay. And sometimes I have an issue when I don't like the name, especially if you're a protagonist, if you're the main guy or you're the main girl and I don't like your name.
maybe I'll stop reading. It's just, if I don't like the name, it gives me an ache. But this one, to be fair, it was fine. Like, I don't like the name Rain, but the character itself was kind of, he's okay. Like, he's great. I look past
The name choice. Just why Rain? Why?
she meets Rain in the tournament. They form an alliance because there were some challenges in the tournament that required an alliance. And then, you know, things happen. They harbor feelings, which is not supposed to happen because Rain is of a different vampire clan. So Araya's father is the king of all the vampires. He's a Nightborn king, and he's a Hyaj vampire. Rain is a Rishon vampire, and these two vampire clans hate each other. They are enemies, and years ago, like hundreds of years ago, Vincent, the dad, he overthrew the kingdom of the Rishon, and he ascended the throne because he killed the previous king of the Rishon. So these two are really just fighting over the throne every other century or something. So they're not allowed to fall in love because basically they're enemies. So yeah, that's the plot. It's great. It was so fun. The only thing I think, I've been trying to analyze what was missing. Nothing went wrong. There were so little characters to care about that it felt like there was something missing. So there was only Araya. I mean, there were obviously other characters, but characters spotlighted were just Araya, Rain, Vincent the father, Misha, one of the contestants that was also their ally. There were a few spotlighted characters, but they were just because of the plot, but not really because of characterization and like importance of characters. So there were so little characters to care about, only Rain and Araya. So the stakes for me, honestly, were so low. A big chunk of Araya's mission was to protect the human districts and to protect the humans, but there were so many. She had one human friend at the beginning that we got to know a bit, but that's it. Like, there's no one else to care about, so the stakes don't feel as high, so the emotional connection wasn't also as deep, I guess. So I wish there really was more, I don't know, there were more characters to care about. I wish there were more humans that were introduced. That could have been more stakes for Araya to fight for in the tournament, because she wanted to protect these humans. That's what I'm hoping for the second book. I'm already 15% into the second book. I don't know if I like where it's going, honestly. I'm not saying it's bad, but I just don't know where it's heading, and I'm not yet fully gripped by it, but I'm still reading it, and it's a book that I look forward to reading. It's a little fun lore. Like, I missed reading about vampires. Honestly, I haven't read about vampires in forever. I wouldn't say since Twilight, because I think I have read a few in between, but in forever. I used to read about vampires so much. One of my favorite vampire series, segue. One of my favorite vampire series as a kid was called Vampirates. Don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's about vampire pirates. I love vampires. Anyway, love the vampire lore. Love to be back in the vampire lore and the vampire world. But yeah, a 3.5 for Serpent and the Wings of Night. Going to the 4-star category. I have 2, maybe 3, because I honestly don't know where to categorize the third one, but we'll get there. The first book in my 4 stars is One for My Enemy by Olivia Blake. And this one, honestly, was such a slay. It is about, or is a modern retelling of Romeo and Juliet with a bit more fantastical and magical elements. When you hear the plot of this, you're gonna be so intrigued because it's such a good plot. It's such a good world. So it's about 2 rival families in the heart of New York City, I believe. They're 2 rival criminal families, and they're also witches. I'm just gonna read you the blurb because it's so good. On one side of the conflict are the Antonova sisters, each one beautiful, cunning, and ruthless, and their mother, the elusive supplier of premium intoxicants known only as Baba Yaga. On the other side, the influential Fedorov brothers serve their father, the crime boss, known as Kostche. Sorry if I'm butchering that. Kostche the Deathless, whose community extortion ventures dominate the shadows of magical Manhattan. So they're both magical families, they're rivals, they're criminals. Like, they're both criminal families, which is so cool. It's like Mafia Wars. It's giving Mafia Wars for witches. But one family are all women and one family are all men. So patriarchs, matriarchs. After 12 years of tenuous coexistence, a change in one's family's interests
threats causes a rift in the existing stalemate. When bad blood brings both families to the precipice of disaster, fate intervenes with a chance encounter, and in the aftershocks of a resurrected conflict, everyone must choose a side. It's so interesting because there's so much history within the family. Like the matriarch and the patriarch both have history. I won't say what kind of history it is. The eldest sister and the eldest brother also have history. I also won't say, when I say history, they're not all romantic. Maybe some, but not all. But there's some form of history within the family for each family member. And then I wouldn't say counterpart, because sometimes it's not like direct, like it's not always the older and the older, but they really intersect at one point in history, and it's so interesting. Also, I want to show you, I have a copy of the book. I want to show you the art of this book because, wait just a second. So this is the cover, and then what I wanted to show you was the artwork. The artwork in this book. Olive Blake always has the best artwork because she, Little Chimura, she dedicated this book to this artist who also drew her art for Atlas 6, which also I've read, which is an amazing book. This book is dedicated to Little Chimura, who spirits my daydreams to life. In exchange for the rare gift you so readily share and for the magic you have given me, here, have this book. And I will show you the art. This is the first art. Don't know if you can see it. Look at this. Is it focusing? Look at this. Look at this. Can you see it? This is really just such a beautiful book with beautiful art. There's something about the way Olive Blake writes. It's so lyrical, it's so intentional and magical. There's always a sprinkle of magic and mystery in all her lines and all her sentences. And the dialogue, amazing. There's a lot of banter in this book because they're rival families and they're rival female family, male family. So a lot of banter, which she is so good at writing. So this was really, really, really chef's kiss. The last book I have as a 4 stars, and it's not a book, it's a script. I read Love, Loss, and What I Wore by Nora Ephron. Nora Ephron is a playwright, also a screenwriter. She wrote When Harry Met Sally. I don't know what other works she's had, but that's the one that I know that's really well known and famous. And this was such a treat. I really, really loved this. So it's a bunch of monologues and ensemble pieces relating to women and their clothes and their relationship with their clothes, how they dress, the circumstances in their life and the plot points in their life, if you will, and what they wore and how important these things tie up together. And it was just a really nice and really heartfelt, sometimes sad, sometimes funny, sometimes really happy monologues and pieces of women and how a lot of the clothes that they wear and the pieces that they wear, jewelry, the hair that they have, really represent a big part of them. I wouldn't say it's not the same for men, but definitely much more for women. And this play really emphasized that how we tie what we wear to our experiences in life, it really matters to us what we're wearing in certain situations and how it will affect our mood and how it will affect how our day will go or how that certain challenge will be handled by us. So this was really such a good play. I wish I could see it live. I wish I could stage it live myself. But yeah, this is definitely one of the dream scripts that I have in the roster of dream scripts that I have. Okay, let's go to the book that I don't know what rating I have for it. It probably is in the spectrum of 4 to 5 stars. I don't know if it's a 4. I don't know if it's a 5. And I'm so proud of myself for actually reading this because I never thought ever in my life that I would pick this book up. It's considered a modern classic. I think it's 600 pages plus. It's a big tome. It doesn't seem like it, but it's really long. I promise you it's so long. It seemed really daunting and it seemed like a book for big-brained people. But I'm so proud to announce that I have read The Secret History by Donna Tartt. Every dark academia book, I think, in the 21st century has been modeled after this book. When people say dark Academia, the first thing that pops up into everyone's brains, even if you haven't read it, I will say, is The Secret History. And Donna Tartt, as an author herself, is such an interesting character in the world. She only appears every couple of years. I only found out about this myself. Like, she writes a book, she disappears for years, and then she comes back with another great best-selling book like Goldfinch, and then she disappears again. So she's such an interesting character, like she's such an interesting person, and it really bleeds into her work. Her mysteriousness, you know, she seems like such a cultured, well-read, intelligent, wise person with so many mysteries and stories up her sleeve. So The Secret History is a story of 6 students, again in an elite university, who are chosen or handpicked to study Greek history. Yes, Greek studies, Greek history. And this class is so incredibly exclusive. So this professor, I forgot his name, but he handpicks students to be in this class, and it doesn't go over 5. So there are only 5 students. These students don't take any other classes. They don't take any other courses but this class. So this is their major. Like, the stipulation of the professor, Julian, I think his name is Julian. Julian's stipulations are, I am the only teacher who can teach you, and you will only go to my class. So you graduate 4 years of school with just one teacher. Our main protagonist, or our main character, Richard, I believe is his name. Sorry if it's not his name, but I think it's Richard. So Richard gets into this school. He has a really rough childhood history with his family. He gets into this school to study Greek. No, not to study Greek, to study something else. I've forgotten what. He gets into the school, he meets these kids from this really exclusive class, is intrigued, tries to join the class because he does have some knowledge in Greek studies in his previous school, and he wanted to join, but then he was told that he wasn't allowed to join. But I guess there was something about him that they saw, because he was really good in Greek texts. They let him in. They form like this really weird friendship together, these 6 rich elite students. 2 of them are brother and sister, and then one is Henry, who is like the leader of the pack. I will say a lot of the writing was very meandering. It was very visually beautiful. You really were transported into the world of The Secret History and into that school and with those people. A lot of the book tackled alcoholism, drugs. There is a murder. It's kind of a murder mystery, if we could call it that. It seems so shallow to say murder mystery, honestly, but there was a murder. We find out actually right off the bat when you start the prologue that there is a murder. You find out who does it. So you kind of go through the book, like the first part of the book, anticipating that murder because you already foreshadowed it or mentioned it. It was already mentioned in the prologue. So you kind of wait until that murder happens, and that's kind of the rising action. And then the second part of the book is them going through everything after, like post-murder. Okay, I'm gonna say the spoiler. I'm gonna put a spoiler. I'm gonna put my hand here while I'm saying the spoiler, and if you want to skip it, just wait for me to put down my hand, okay? Because I really can't talk about this without saying the spoiler. After what's his name dies, and we know off the bat that they all killed him, but after Bunny, that's his name. After Bunny dies, it kind of falls flat again for me towards the end, going through the motions of their turbulent turmoil of coping with their mistakes and what they did to Bunny. Well, it wasn't a mistake because it was intentional, but I don't know. It felt weird. It was a weird, like, I don't know if I liked it. I don't know if I got bored. A lot of it was just, there was so much drinking and so much like alcohol in this that it was quite uncomfortable. Okay, hand off. No more spoilers. But what I guess would put it up for me in the 4 spectrum is it really makes you think. It leaves such a big impression, such a big dent in your head. After reading this book, I don't know, there was something, I just couldn't stop thinking about it. And the number one question in my head was like, what is this book trying to tell me? What is the message that like I'm trying to figure out? Obviously, it was social commentary on elitism, on classes, on rich people, on alcoholism. But you know, I was trying to figure out what that concrete message was. Maybe there isn't, but it pokes through your brain. It really does. And I guess I'll give it maybe a 4 to 4.5 stars because it was such a journey. What a feat, an absolute feat for me. And I'm So proud of myself. Okay, going to my sure 5 stars. These are 2 books in my year, my best books of the year. And the first one is I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. Wow. I think everything about this book has already been said online, especially when it came out. It was such a big thing. We found out things about the industry, about Nickelodeon. I was such a big Nickelodeon kid. I watched all of iCarly, all of Victorious, all of Zoe 101, all of those. Looking back at this, at this whole thing with Zack Schneider, I believe is his name. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. It was horrifying to even think that all the actors that I looked up to as a kid, all the actors that I've been watching, that I wanted to be with, that I wanted to be, were traumatized by this evil, vile producer and this really horrific system in Hollywood, especially towards children. And it was such a painful read to go through Jeanette's life with her again, with her mom, with her eating disorders, with her complicated relationship with her mother, with her addiction. Jeanette is such a strong woman. Her writing the book was sort of a catharsis for her, how she took over a life once again, especially after her mom died, how she told her story. It was just painful. Honestly, this book was pain. And I simultaneously read and listened to the audiobook, and she was the one narrating the audiobook. That was the nail on the coffin for me. Painful, absolutely, so uncomfortable, so heart-wrenching, but so important. This story was so important for her to tell and so important for all of us to hear, especially former fans of iCarly. Wow. This was really, no question, an absolute 5 stars for me. Okay, we're off to the last book, and I'm not gonna delay this any further. This is the best read of my year. 10 stars, if I can give it a 10 stars. And it's the most unassuming book ever. I read it on a Kindle, and I listened also to the audiobook because the author is an audiobook narrator, and that's how he started. And then after narrating so many books, he wrote his own book. I'm so happy to have listened to his version of the audiobook as well as simultaneously reading it with the book. And that is Legends and Lattes, a novel of high fantasy and low stakes. What? Isn't that the best title you've ever heard? A novel of high fantasy and low stakes? That is honestly what I want. That's what I need. That's especially in the time that I read it. It was, I think, November. It was the peak of my work year, honestly. And I just wanted something light. I wanted a warm hug. I wanted something cozy. It was also Halloween season, which was perfect. And this book is just the warmest cup of coffee or tea with honey that you will ever have. The warmest hug, the fluffiest blanket ever in the form of a book. I'm so happy to tell you what this is about. This is about an orc. So Vivian, she's an orc, and she was a warrior. So she went through battles, she went through wars with her squad. But one day she decided that she didn't want to be a warrior anymore. And she discovered the beautiful creation that is coffee in the gnome village. So the gnomes, they have coffee, and Vivian has never tried coffee before, and the first time she drank it, she was just transported to a different realm. And from that day on, she said she has decided she wanted to open her own coffee shop. So this is just about an orc, a warrior orc, who just wants to hang her sword on the wall and delve into a different path. And that's opening up a coffee shop. It's so random. It's honestly the most random plot in the world, but also the most perfect plot. Because she moves to this different city. She hires someone. His name, and I think he's my favorite character in the book. Oh, Cal. So Cal is Hob Carpenter. So she recruits Hob Carpenter. His name is Calamity, but his nickname is Cal, to help her get the property in shape. So they build this beautiful cafe, and then she starts hiring people. So she hires this little Thimble. His name is Thimble Ratkin. So Thimble is a ratkin, and he is the baker that they hire for the coffee shop. She also hires Tandri, who is a succubus, to be her barista partner, the cashier and barista. They form this little, it's like a found family trope. There's also a woman across the street, like a kind woman who always comes in for sweet treats. There are so many other characters that they come across that come into the cafe, and we learn about these characters and all their stories. It's so fun. It's so cozy. Of course, there is conflict. There are antagonists that try to destroy Vivian's dreams, and because she was a former warrior, she had enemies before. It's just one big cozy adventure, like small adventure for this little found family and Vivian and Tandri. I honestly think this is a whole, like, it's like a big D&D fanfic to me, honestly, because the characters, they're dwarves, they're ratkins, succubuses, orcs. I think, you know what, I could be wrong, but I think this is very much D&D inspired, like Dungeons and Dragons inspired, definitely. Yeah, Legends and Lattes, I can't tell you more because I'm gonna be giving spoilers, but this is just honestly, if you need a good time, and it's so well written. I forgot to mention, it's so well written. Such gentle and tender prose is how I can describe it. And I can't tell you enough. I don't know how, but please read Legends and Lattes. If there is one book I will recommend to you with all the books I read in 2024, it will be Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. Those are my books for 2024. Again, this year was a year of mid books, I will say. There weren't a lot of books that really wowed me. A lot of it were very disappointing, which is why overall I really feel a bit disappointed with my picks for the year. So I'm really hoping to read more this year so that I have more room for losses, because this year was really just, it was average. Which is kind of sad, because with a bad book, at least you can talk about it and, you know, there are so many emotions for it. With a really good book, it's the exact same. But with a mid or like an average book, there's really not much to say other than you want more from it, or like you're looking for that oomph or that secret sauce. You know what I mean? That's it for my books of 2024. I hope you're still here until the end. If you are, thank you so much. Like, wow, I've been yapping for so long already. But thank you if you stuck around until the end. I really appreciate you. If you didn't, that's fine. Totally understand. But thank you anyway for having been here. 2024 has been quite challenging emotionally and mentally for me, honestly. And I really wish for and hope for a more peaceful year for you and for me. Thank you so much for swinging by my channel, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.